right, I think I'm on now. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our information session for the October 2022 town meeting. So the warrant system. The warrant this fall is actually not that long. They're really just a few articles of interest. So I'll go through all of the town articles. I won't go through some of the petitioner articles. I need that for the petitioners. And I think we'll also open it up for the business zoning article that was submitted by the zoning bylaw review committee. And I think the town building commissioner is online, so I'll have him available for questions if you have any. So what I'd like to do is start with the first town article, which is, I'm going to skip over these two appointment articles. This is just an appointment to the Bowers Committee, looks like John Conway and Reno Morricone are being presented for that committee. And then the town moderator will hear reports. And we will have one consent agenda motion, and that will be the budget amendment and the two debt stabilization articles. They're basically financial articles. So we'll put those three together. They're not very controversial. So right now, what I'll do is I'll go through the budget amendment and then through those two debt stabilization articles. So the first one is budget amendment. So there are several line items that are being adjusted, that are being increased. And no surprise, I think to anyone will be that town building utilities is being increased by. Oh, hold on, I'm going to stop my share and reshare it. Someone's screens. All right. Let's see if that's showing up again. How's that look like? Is that working? Okay, so the first increase will be to natural gas. This account is being increased because the contract is expiring on November 1st. And it's anticipated that the new contract will have significantly higher rates. That's obviously due to what's going on in this commodities market. So natural gas is expected to go up significantly, so we're preparing for that. There we go. And then similarly, the town system-wide fuel account is also being increased by $50,000 because gas has gone up as well. And so we're appropriating $50,000 to increase that line item. And then the third thing in the regular budget is Medicare costs. So each year we do usually make them when there's a budget amendment, there's usually an adjustment to this line item, Medicare. So this line item is being increased by $225,000. And the original appropriation was 1.1 million, and we're increasing it. 170 of that is just an amendment that we're catching up to from last year that was done after the budget was set. So we're including that amendment and then anticipating another $55,000 as well to account for some contracts that are expected to settle in this town meeting, as well as new salaries and new employees that are hired. Those come on to Medicare expense. So all of that is a $225,000 projection to increase that line item. And then the next line item is in my budget, the town manager's personnel account. It is currently $635,000. We're increasing that by $14,000, and that's due for employee retention and trying to remain competitive, specifically with the assistant town manager's position. It's not unique to the municipal market, but employees are harder to come by and harder to hang on to. So this is an effort to make sure we hang on to some good employees in my office. This isn't for my position, it's for the assistant town manager's position. So that that is the fourth item in the regular budget. So the total change to the regular budget is $339,124. And then the last change, which is actually to the sewer enterprise budget, is a $250,000 amendment to contract services. And again, this is for sludge hauling, which part of this expense is due to fuel, but another part of it is due to it's difficult to dispose of sludge, and it's there aren't many places to do it, and that cost is going up. So the market has changed after we set the original budget. So we're looking to accommodate that through this appropriation, $250,000. So that line item is $1.1 million originally. So we're from about 1.384 to do that. And then what I'll do is I'll just go through the two debt stabilization articles, and then I'll open it up for questions, since these will be presented as a consent agenda. So the first debt stabilization article is Article 4, and this is all part of our debt stabilization policy. And this article is addressing two pieces of that policy. One piece is that we don't like to exceed an impact on the levy of more than $9,066,000. So in order to do that, if our budget is more than that number, 9 million, we appropriate money out of the debt stabilization account to pay for that portion that's above the 9 million. So in this year's budget, that will be 1.1 million, 1,112,618. And we usually don't do it until this time of year because we don't know what our debt situation is going to be until certain things shake out. So that's why it's done in the fall. So that first paragraph 3 in our debt stabilization policy is just to make sure that the levy impact does not exceed 9 million. So that 1 million will do that, and will keep us at that number. And then the second portion is an appropriation of $900,000 to ensure that all of our debt excluded debt service does not exceed $200 impact on the average single family home. Now that debt excluded debt service is affiliated with the high school project and the private school project. And the promise that was made when these projects were presented was that the impact of the average single family home would not exceed $200. So we monitor it every year, and we appropriate an amount of money to ensure that that is the case. So this year, the amount of money that we need to appropriate towards the levy is $900,000 to accomplish that. So in total, the appropriation out of debt stabilization is $2,012,618. And so that means that the levy will be reduced by that amount because we're not paying that out of the raise and appropriate or through taxation. So in a sense, that's providing some tax relief to the taxpayer. That was promised through these two policy programs, one associated with the schools and one associated with managing general debt throughout the town. And then the last article in this consent agenda is Article 24. Now this is moving money into the debt stabilization fund. So each year we appropriate $1.8 million from free cash and retained earnings to debt stabilization. And that's what this article is doing. It's 1.8 million, and so we're taking 370,000 from free cash and 1.43 million from wastewater retained earnings for a total amount of 1.8 million. So that will put that money into that account. And so the net impact to our debt stabilization account is just about $200,000 to the negative, but the balance in our debt stabilization fund is over 22 million. So we're in very good shape there, and it's serving us well to help reduce the impact of all of these major infrastructure projects that I think in the end, good for the town. So with that, Clancy, I'll open it up for questions on any of those three articles. If anybody has any.
John, I don't see any hands raised.
All right, so I will move on. So this is the town, this will probably be the biggest article on the agenda. It is the town capital article. So, I'm not going to cover the community preservation, article, but I will answer questions if anybody has any at the end. But the next town article, and then in the warrant, there are two collective bargaining articles from the school. And then you jump to Article 16, which is this article here, which is the town and school capital article, which is the biggest article on the warrant. It's an article of $4.9 million in total, going towards capital projects throughout the town, for this fiscal year. So there are basically, 4 different areas that we're focusing on. One is DPW, and that is the first 3 sections of this article. Another is town projects, which is the 4th section of this. And then the school projects are the 5th section. And the last section is actually the town center. So I'll go through the DPW appropriations first. They're spread out through 4 different sources: free cash, retained earnings for wastewater, and retained earnings for water. And retained earnings is just another word for free cash, but free cash is free cash within those 2 enterprise budgets. So a few years back, we had separated those budgets from the general fund budget. So we have a general fund budget, a water enterprise budget, and a sewer enterprise budget. And those 2 enterprise budgets have retained earnings instead of free cash. And then the last source for the DPW appropriations is the sale of lots and graves through the cemetery. So replacement of fleet assets at the end of their economic life is a necessary cost of doing business. It's recommended that annual funds be provided during the budget cycle as a priority item. The difference here, there's a new DPW director, Fred Russell, who will be at the town meeting, but was unable to be here tonight. But he has a different economic theory about, he follows a different economic theory that's done to American Public Works Association. Instead of riding your vehicles basically into the ground, he wants to implement a practice of selling the vehicles or trading them in when they still have value. And what that does is, once they reach a certain point with just investing money into those vehicles, they become more of a liability than anything else. So that's what this curve represents. So the bottom of the curve is where the vehicles have the most value. And that's when is the optimum time to replace those vehicles. Because as you move to the right side of that curve, the cost of maintaining those vehicles and operating them goes up and up and up. So with that said, he wants to implement this new policy. So this will retain assets beyond this point leads to the following. If you retain assets beyond that point, it leads to the following adverse positions, conditions, which I've pretty much probably mentioned, but it increases the operating costs of the fleet and the budget because they're breaking down. It increases the turnaround time as the complexity of repairs increases, the cost of availability decrease. It decreases the overall assets availability, things are offline longer, increase in the fleet asset failure. The older the fleet, the greater the opportunity for catastrophic failure, which we had this winter. I know we had a dump truck that had to be rebuilt, the engine anyway. Decrease in salvage trading value, so there's no value left to vehicles that you hold on to too long. The public perception of the DPW as a whole is diminished by holding on to vehicles that don't look like they're safe enough to be on the road. Operator safety is compromised as vehicles and equipment if they've been on the road too long. Potential non-compliance with regulatory requirements as well, like emissions and just general safety of the vehicles and passing inspections, so. So that's the strategy, is to replace the vehicles at the end of their economic life, not at the end of their life. And so that's basically it, and if you look in the article itself, you can see that we're replacing in the highway department, they're replacing two admin vehicles, one for engineering, one for the DPW admin. And then there's three highway trucks, actually 5 highway trucks, if you look on here. A 5-ton dump, a 3/4-ton utility, a bucket truck, and 2 1-ton dumps. And then the Parks Department, there are 2 3/4-ton pickups. And that's all being paid for out of free cash, $795,000. And then the sewer retained earnings account, we're going to acquire 2 vehicles there. One is a transit van with camera on it. In that van is going to be the use of that vehicle is going to increase dramatically, because we're using that vehicle to camera pipes of all the roads that we're doing prior to paving them, going down and checking sewer lines, making, seeing if there's any work that needs to be done to them before we do a major project. So we're looking to acquire a new van, as well as 3 sewer trucks, 3 3/4-ton utility trucks. And that's again purchased the sewer retained earnings. And then on the water side, with water retained earnings is $215,000 in vehicles, a water truck, a utility truck, and a 1-ton dump. And then lastly, in the cemetery department, $205,000 coming out of the sale of lots and graves for a 3/4-ton pickup, a new excavator, and a 1-ton dump. And then moving out of DPW and getting into the town projects and the ambulance. The first thing is the ambulance. We are putting in for a new ambulance. The town runs 2 frontline ambulances 24 hours a day, the A truck and the B truck. The A truck currently has 68,000 miles on it. The B truck has 133 miles on it. If you go above 100,000 miles on an ambulance, usually it's becomes a very undependable vehicle, and they're in the shop quite a bit. So we try to maintain 2 frontline vehicles that have less than 133 miles on, or 100,000, I should say. And in this case, we actually have an ambulance on back order that will take that 1,000 mile vehicle offline. That D truck that you can see in the slide is out of service, I think, for good, and the C truck is in repair, I believe. So there's a huge back order on these trucks. So this truck, if it's approved and it's ordered, I don't believe it's coming into 2024. So it's important to get it ordered so that by the time it comes in, that 68,000 mile truck will have well over 100,000 miles on it. So that's a $350,000 appropriation coming out of free cash for that ambulance. So the last one was 200. Last quote we got was 271,000, but the increase, they've increased by 28%, which should be, you take that number times 1.28, and it comes out to $348,000. So they're expensive. The Katie Durand Memorial Park is a park up on Carter Street that the town has been working on for some time. This is a picture of the park. It's an area that you can go and launch a canoe or a kayak into the river. So It is a memorial to Katie Duran, who was a town employee that worked in the conservation department, who unfortunately died very young and too early from cancer. And she was very much involved in projects like this, so I think this is a great tribute to her memory. And just to give you a little history on this project, so the bid for the project is $265,000. We actually have $66,000 left in the funds remaining from prior appropriations. So design and permitting has already been paid for. We have some funds remaining, but in order to finish the project, we'll need an additional $200,000. And that would be coming from free cash to finish this project. And so that covers that project. Town Hall Auditorium. You are all familiar with Town Hall Auditorium because you're town meeting members. All I have to do is ask you to come out from under the balcony and look up, and you can see the condition of the ceiling in that hall. It needs a tremendous amount of work. So what we're trying to do is there are issues with that room associated with audio. It's hard to hear in that room for a lot of people, depending on where you are in the room. Lighting is a problem in that room. HVAC ventilation is a problem in that room. And sometimes the two of them together are a problem if you are on the right side of the room and you can't hear the audio because the vent is going. And so there's a tremendous amount of issues with the ability to have a good environment to run a town meeting out of that room. So we're looking to renovate the room and bring up the technology in the room. Also to change the furnishings in the room because the room is, those chairs are not very comfortable, and if you're sitting in there for 5 hours, they can be very uncomfortable. We're looking at changing room 110, which is adjacent to the auditorium, to a storage room so that we can move things into that room when the auditorium is not being used for a town meeting. Because that room is used quite a bit by many different organizations throughout the town. So we're looking at possibly removing the stage. And also the balcony above the auditorium is a space that's not very well utilized. So we're looking at putting a floor up there instead of having the stairs that go down, and maybe putting some conference room space up there, as well as maybe another fitness area. But those are things that are on a wish list. This is just one of the diagrams that PRA has done. So we've actually already begun work on this project, and that's because we've received state earmarks up the amount of $120,000 from both Representative Lombardo and also Senator Friedman. They were both instrumental in getting that money. And then ARPA, there's been some ARPA money dedicated to the project as well. So then if town meeting passes this appropriation to $600,000, that'll give us a healthy budget to move forward with this project. And if we can, as we get further along in the design and see exactly what we can accomplish. But the main thing to accomplish is making that room a good room, not just for town meeting, but for the community to use for all different purposes, and make it a comfortable room. And it is the centerpiece of the building, and it would be nice to have it updated. It hasn't been updated since, I think, 1989. So moving on to the next article, if you recall from last fall, I believe Article 21 was a request for lighting for Pollard and Vining lighting. But we only had enough money at that time to appropriate money for the Pollard lighting. I believe it was around 800,000 that was requested at that time. And so just to give you an update on what's going on those fields, the lighting, some of the lighting is actually falling down. That top picture is where a light used to be, and you can see some of the poles are leaning over. The telephone poles are very old lights, they're dangerous. They've been taken down, so now there's no lighting on that field. There was lighting there. So we're looking to replace that lighting. These are the two fields that Vining, field 1 and 2. And this appropriation would $540,000 cover the cost of, putting up these lights. I feel like, we're somewhat of an expert on field lighting because we're doing the, project at, Peggy Hammond Rizza, and that, we're putting lights up there. We just put lights up at the high school. So we, getting pretty good at these types of projects. And the pod obviously will be done. And, so that will take care of that. There is another article to clean up these two fields as well. That's the CPC article. But this 540,000 is for the light project. And then I will do is, I'll just talk about a little bit about the school capital, request. So they're requesting $670,000. Again, that will be through free cash. And they're looking to do some culvert repair at the Futile School. They had a major issue over there in the last year or so. And I know engineering has been working with them to design a solution. So that's $180,000 project. The Hornboard rink needs a new boiler, that's $150,000. The elementary school playgrounds need to be rehabbed, and so there's $200,000 appropriated for that. Sprinkler repair and upgrade at the Ditson, as well as HVAC control upgrades at the Ditson. That's $120,000. So I know the superintendent will comment on that at town meeting, but it's good to see that they're spending some money on the Ditson. People think of it as a new school, but it's actually about 20 years old now, so it's good to make sure that we're maintaining those facilities. Then the last piece of this is the town center. And if you've been around for a long time, you'll remember this project from 2012. I certainly do. And it was a project, I think that was a good idea, and maybe people just weren't ready for it at the time. But the current select board has voted to move forward with the design process for the town center. So rewinding back a little bit, prior to COVID, we had started looking at the old plan. We got a technical assistance grant from the state and started looking at the old plan with the new engineering firm. We had beta for the first design, and the second one, we had a technical review by Stantec. They were very good, and they walked us through a process with different stakeholders in the town hall, the engineering, traffic, and conservation, and different areas that would have an interest in a project like this. And they presented sort of an improved plan to the select board that was done a couple of weeks ago. And so, like I said, we had engaged the Stantec to do that work. And the other thing that we did before we met with the board was we met with stakeholders within the town center, and we actually received some very positive feedback about the project. We met with Taylor Flores, we met with Brandon Insurance, we met with the gentleman who owns the 3 buildings downtown, the Senate Cafe, BATV, and Manja Manja. We met with Manja Manja themselves. We met with O'Connor Hardware. We met with the municipal side of the street as well. And we met with the Eva Marshall family, her 2 sons and her daughter, several times. And you know, I was most encouraged by particularly Manja Manja's response was positive, because they watched how we handled the project south of the center and how well that went. I think that gave them some level of confidence that you know, we would handle this one in a similar fashion. Clearly their interest is one of their greatest interests is making sure that their business isn't disrupted during a town center project. So we are keenly aware of that, and we would employ all of the same practices we did with the first one to make sure that the road is open throughout the whole project and that businesses aren't disturbed, and keeping power on and things running throughout the whole project is important, which is one thing we did in the last one. The bank cannot lose power, so we had to make sure that that didn't happen when we switching over, and so we would definitely be able to accommodate them, and they were very receptive to that. So that was positive, and we brought all of this to the select board, and the general goals really have not changed. It's just to improve traffic flow and safety, improve pedestrian safety, and provide safer access to the town common. Approval of this funding is only for design and process. Does not commit the town to a final design plan. So what you'd be acting on tonight is just to begin that process, not to commit to any final plan. If approved, the town will engage in a very open and transparent process that involves a significant amount of public input. So we would have public hearings, and we did the last time as well, but what we didn't have the last time is the benefit of Zoom and social media that we certainly will take advantage of this time to try to engage more stakeholders into the discussion. Ultimately, the roadway commission, which is the select board, will approve the final design based on this very public process. Construction funding would be pursued through state and federal resources as well as local. Project cost is estimated to be about $17 million. So I would be looking for, different types of Mass Works monies, ARPA monies, infrastructure mitigation money that's been recently approved at the federal level. So there are several opportunities that we will be pursuing to fund this. But the task before us now is to whether to engage in the process of studying the issue and coming up with a solution and a cost and a plan to make that a reality. So that's what's before you tonight, and that's an appropriation of $1 million for the design, and that's coming out of overlay surplus. So as I said, the objective of this warrant article is not to engage in a discussion about what is the best solution to this issue, but rather to decide whether to engage in the process to determine the best solution and move it forward. So with that, that's all of the capital article. I Clancy, I'd suggest we open it up, see if anybody has any questions on any of those items.
Sure. First person up is Shelley.
Okay.
Hi there. Question on the new way that they're going to be deciding what vehicles to replace and everything. I'm glad to see them using some type of a fact-based thing. Are they, number one, going to keep track of costs like over the next few years and see if this is in fact a good way of doing things? If it's costing us less as a percentage of our budget, or are we just going to just go to this new way of doing it and hope that it's okay?
So this came up at I think finance committee, and so it's hard to say right now anecdotally what you could say. Like I mentioned, there was a vehicle that had to be rebuilt, and it was very expensive. So that's an example of a vehicle that we probably should have traded in sooner. But the best way to do it is, and I think what the DPW directors said at the meeting was, we will track the expense budget moving forward and see what happens. That in theory, that budget should what we expend on repairs should go down the longer we implement this program, because we'll be holding on to vehicles for a shorter time period. So the short answer is yes, we will be monitoring that. The best way to measure that metric is through looking at what we're spending on vehicles after we implement this program. I believe there's a software program associated with that as well. So
that's why I just want to make sure that we are going to keep tracking it. And also, I'm not sure because you didn't show the budget stuff, but do we have the amounts that we're anticipating getting for selling the things the stuff we're getting rid of in the budget?
I don't have those, so they're like, some of those, they won't get much at all because they're not, there's not much left up to them. But
Mhm.
yes, those amounts, you know, they'll be either used as trade-ins for vehicles, or we have to auction them off. I'd rather trade them in because, we have a better chance of getting something for them.
Okay,
But we will do that. But if we end up with any extra money because of that, that would end up going into the
Re-
general fund and come out through free cash again.
okay, that's what I figured. Okay, thank you.
Tina, you're up next.
Hi, thank you, Clancy. Hi, Mr. Curran. If we could go back to the Buck Auditorium slide.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the fitness room. Is that gonna be something that's open to the public? Who's that gonna be used?
It'd be by employees, wasn't something that we thought of as a public use, but there were a lot of department heads, that are in here late at night, for meetings, and I think that would be a nice, benefit for employees. I know I could use it, but, you know, I think it would be a nice benefit for people that are here for a good portion of the day, that they'd be likely to use it.
Okay, I can appreciate promoting healthy living in the workspace. My concern is that, as you know, VSAP has been struggling with storage space for many years now. So I would recommend that if we are going to redo the second floor of the Buck Auditorium, that there should be some space included for storage. So if you could please keep that in mind, I'd appreciate it.
Actually, I'm way ahead of you, at the risk of getting off the topic of this article, but so the DPW is going to be moving out of this building. And we're in the process of going through just that. We were finding space for BSAP, for Historic District Commission, for the ADA Commission. And there will be space in the building, much more space in the building for those uses in the near future. So at the time that this is finishing up, I would expect that some of those things will be opening up as well. We're moving some departments around in town hall, and I know that there's gonna be space opening up, and that is one of the things that we're going to do, is address meet your space needs.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Matt, you're up next.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks, Clancy. Mr. Karen, I had some questions in regards to the trucks. I came in a few minutes late, so I think I missed the beginning of it. Regarding replacing trucks and equipment and all that stuff, is this stuff getting replaced because they have failed inspection, or they're completely broken down trucks? Are you trying to replace them preemptively? Is there issues with them? I mean, it seems like a whole bunch of trucks in different departments. I kind of missed the beginning of that, so I guess that was my first part of the question.
So the first go around is that most of these trucks are at the end of their useful life, and they're being replaced for that purpose, so they don't have a lot of value. There are some of the trucks that do have some value that are being replaced, because if we hold on to them, we'll end up spending more money on them to repair them. Ultimately, that's where we want to be, at a point where we're replacing vehicles before they're costing us a lot of money. We're certainly not there yet, but that's what the goal is. But to answer your question, most of these vehicles are at the end of their useful life, not at the end of their economic life. And so they are being replaced, but some of them are not. Some of them are vehicles that are being traded in. They still have some value, but they're being replaced before they become a drain on the maintenance account of the DPW.
I guess I'm a little confused on the term of useful life. you know, like if these vehicles are still passing state safety inspections and emissions inspections and they're running and driving, so like, I guess I don't understand, like we're replacing them for what reason? Like, are the maintenance costs, like, how high are they? Like, you guys don't usually bring this information to us as town meeting as to, you know, hey, we got X amount of vehicles and, you know, these vehicles need $10,000 to $20,000 in repairs and they're $40,000 trucks and it exceeds that. So I guess that was kind of like part of my question is, whereas we don't, you know, we as town meeting members don't generally get that kind of information. We get like a kind of like a broad scope. So it makes it a little difficult, I guess, in my eyes to understand why we're doing that. Like a useful life, like if the vehicle is passing safety and emissions inspections and it can still be started up and driven to what it does, you know, day to day, like I don't understand the term, it's past its useful life.
So I mean, and I guess I'll talk to the DPW director about this, but to maybe to articulate it a little better. You can pass an inspection, but then, you know, 6 months later in the middle of a snowstorm, drop a transmission in a truck that's 8 years old, that's got, you know, 1,100 hours on it. And as opposed to, you know, a truck that's only 3 years old, it's not, that's less likely to happen. So, yeah, you can pass inspection, you can still drive it. But you're running a risk when the vehicles get to that age, you know, you end up, you know, a lot of these vehicles that we had, they rot out a lot quicker. We're buying stainless steel bodies for them now to make sure that they don't rot out. But those are some things that, you know, yes, it can pass inspection and still works, it still drives, but you know, something could have, some catastrophic failure can happen to an older vehicle that's less likely to happen to a newer vehicle, which is why the director wants to trade them in before they get into that red zone, you know?
Yeah. You said that the cemetery department's looking to replace a truck, the 1-ton dump truck. Do you know which truck that is?
Off the top of my head, I do not, no, I don't, but I can see if I can find out before the end of the meeting. I might be able to tell you how many miles on it, but, I would have to. But, let me have somebody in my office, see if they can find that document that has some miles on it.
All right, that would be great. Thank you. That's all I have for right this second.
Oh, I was
Uh,
muted, I think. Hello.
uh,
Yes, Mr. Curran, Marlies Henderson. Thank you for the presentation. I just had a question about the presentation of the warrant seems more and more like it's bundling purchases, bundling money sources, and then even more appropriations. And as town meeting representative, I like it better if it's more separated. This is like school and town, and then the next article is school, and there's parks, there's vehicles. I can see why it seems like a good idea to put sexy stuff in there and less sexy stuff, bundle it all and have it be one vote, but it gets a little blurry, and I just wanted to put it out there as one town meeting representative. I wonder how other town meeting representatives feel about the trend of bundling more and more purchases. Just not so much a direct question, or maybe there is a direct answer to it, but just
I
put
can give you some, an answer. It's a combination of a couple of things. One is that, when we went through COVID, we went through the practice of trying to combine certain things to try to help move town meeting along. to make things more efficient and get through the town business in a quicker fashion. I have to be completely honest with you, I didn't expect this article to have this many things in it, but there were a couple of mitigating circumstances that sort of forced that issue. One was that I didn't know about some of these issues. And so there's been some changes in the police department, and the ambulance didn't come out early enough for me to put it in the preliminary warrant. So I had to put it into this article, where that might have been a singular article by itself. The town center, the board didn't have an opportunity to vote on that until after the preliminary warrant was out. So it was not in its own article. So I suspect that there's as much strong feelings as you have, that they could separate these things out through an action of town meeting, which I'm not offended if somebody does that, but there is some efficiency to keeping a lot of the stuff together too. But the other thing is there's a lot in the DPW area, because there's a new director and he's trying to basically implement a new policy. But I would say that most of the capital articles you've seen in the last few years have been pulling from different sources: retained earnings, free cash, overlay. Even old articles have been pulled from to fund them. So I think that this is just a little bit bigger than we used to seeing, and I accept that. I'm not used to seeing it this big either. If I had my choice, I would have separated some of these things out. But in order to move them forward, I have to keep them in one article. But they can still be separated if that's the will of town meeting. I appreciate your concern and I recognize it.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a placeholder issue from what I hear.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't have the authority to put something in the
Yeah.
town center until the board had taken an action, so.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate the answer, and
No. valid
maybe
concern.
shuffle in more placeholders in the future.
Yeah,
Because it's not easy to take something out. The community preservation articles also bundle many, and there were attempts to separate out and it just went nowhere. So it's not so easy to, I mean, you jeopardize something. If somebody really doesn't like something, you might jeopardize the rest. On the other hand, you might pass everything because of one
right.
very favorable one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and just say, well, we'll wait for the next one. I did get the information on those cemetery trucks. So there's a 2013 pickup truck in the cemetery that has 144,000 miles on it. And there's a 2012 F550 dump truck that has 90,000 miles on it. And that compact excavator has 1,400, almost 1,500 hours on it. So those are the three vehicles being replaced in the cemetery department.
John, we have no other questions on the budget amendment, the
All right,
capital article.
All right, I'll move on to the other DPW articles. Let me see if I can get over there. Article, I think, 18. So Article 18 is to fund the replacement of water mains. So this is an appropriation for $1.7 million for the water main. It's an 8-inch main on Boston Road from Tusk Lane to the point near the Crosby Hill standpipe, with a new 12-inch main and a replacement of service lines on town property and associated work, including any and all incidental costs. So this is a borrowing. And it would be, like I said, to replace this water main. We would look in the future to eliminate this borrowing like we've done in the past, and probably use retained earnings to pay it off before we actually had to borrow. So in municipal finance, you don't borrow right away anyway, you borrow short term. So before we went long term, I would look to try to cancel this out. But this is work that needs to get done. And it's in conjunction with the Boston Road, Lexington Road intersection project. So if we can get this done, we're trying to get this work done before we do that street project. So, and that's a tip project, so I kind of referred to this a little bit earlier, talking about doing work in the street, underground before we repave the street. So if there are any questions on this one, I'd be happy to entertain them.
No questions.
All right, and next is Article 19, see if the town will vote to transfer and appropriate the sum of $100,000 from retained earnings, water retained earnings, that is, to do replacement of hydrants and valves in the water distribution system. So we've been doing this on a regular basis. You've probably seen this article before. We take it out of water retained earnings and we replace hydrants each year to make sure that the hydrants are up to date. So we've been doing that for quite a while now. I guess probably around 7 years, and you know, it's been very, very successful. We replace them ourselves with DPW employees, and most of that money goes towards paying for the equipment, the hydrants and the valves themselves. So if anyone has any questions, I can answer them.
We got one from Ken Glasser. Go ahead, Ken.
Hi, guys. Thanks very much for taking the question. Ken Glasser, Precinct 7. Quick question. So will there, any of this money, somebody asked us, is it to replace all of them? Obviously, you answered that it's not, but is it going to fund any adding of hydrants in the area? Like, I don't see hardly anything up here in this part of Middlesex Turnpike area. Maybe it's because of the construction or whatever, but I'm wondering if they're adding anything.
Though generally not, it's generally to replace hydrants, old hydrants. But if you have an issue where you think there should be a hydrant, just, you know, you can talk to us offline, let me know, and we'll, see if we can figure out what it would entail to do that. You know, we might not be able to get it to you right away, but that's something, if there's an area you think is not served well, by all means, bring it to our attention and we'll try to address it.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That's all for this one, John.
Okay, so Article 20, this is an appropriation for 1.4 million out of the water retained earnings account to clean and reline 12-inch water main in Boston Road from Floyd Street to River Street. And this is also trying to do that ahead of the Boston Road project. And cleaning and relining is something we haven't done a lot of in town, but the DPW director has done a lot of that. And it's actually a very efficient way and cost effective, and it's less disturbance because you're not digging up the whole street. They basically go down and core out the pipe and then line it with a lining of cement, and that eliminates the tuberculation in the pipe and gets rid of, you know, it contributes to reducing groundwater. And a lot of times these pipes that are in the ground, these old pipes, they're great pipes, they just need to be cleaned out. And whereas some of the newer pipes aren't so great. And so there's no point in pulling a perfectly good pipe out of the ground if we can reline it and make it last for another 50 to 70 years. So that's what this proposal is. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
No questions.
Okay. Oh, actually, I jumped. What would, that was I was talking about, yeah, 1.4, right? Yes, okay. All right, so now we're on to Article 21. So this is fund the lead service line replacement planning. So this is a $750,000 appropriation is actually done as a borrowing. And we're actually not gonna borrow this money because it's through a Clean Water Trust grant program where we will once we spend the money, then we'll be reimbursed, and then we will not actually borrow the money. But we do have to appropriate, we do have to authorize the bond in order to show good faith that we're gonna do the project. And then they will pay us for the project. So it's a $750,000 project, which is basically a planning project that we go and we out and we audit the town, we clean, we look for lead in the service lines that go from the street, which this illustration shows you where it says corporation stop, all the way to the curb stop. We look and determine where the sources of lead are. And then after we develop this plan, we would look at trying to eliminate or replace, remove some of these lead sources. Now, it doesn't go from the curb stop to the home, but we will have information that we can give to the homeowner if they have issues with lead from the curb stop to their home. It's a requirement basically of the DEP that we're doing. So it's something that we will have to do anyway, and the state's gonna pay for it. The bigger issue is gonna be, what do we do? You know, what's the plan to help repair these things in the future? So that's where that is. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Go ahead, Dina.
Thank you, Clancy. Mr. Curran, what qualifies Billerica as a disadvantaged community in order to be eligible for the loan forgiveness?
I will have to get an answer for you for that. I know we are eligible. I don't know what the precipitating factor is that qualifies us for that, but disadvantage, I think disadvantage, from my recollection, refers to if you already have evidence of lead in your system, or you know that qualifies you for it. But I will find out. I'll have the DPW have that, the director have that answer for Tuesday night.
Great, thank you. And with respect to the lead levels, do we know how high or how low they are? Are we exceeding the guidelines?
We are not exceeding the guidelines at this point. And you know what, I'll make sure that the DPW director talks about that as well. But we still have to address the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, quick question. I just missed what you were saying. It includes the street and to the house, if you have an issue to the house or not to the house?
Not to the house. So you see the
Okay.
slide I have up now?
Yeah, it's a little small because it's in a funky mode. It shows preview. It shows the preview slide at the same time.
Oh, you're seeing that? Oh, yeah.
It's just the different monitor, I think.
Oh, you know why? Because I do this. Hold on.
I was trying to look at it, but I'm like, I just can't read that.
So it says, so the gooseneck. See, do you see where my arrow is?
Yep.
So it goes from here to here, which is the curb stop line.
Yep.
So that's the beginning of the property line. So from here to here, the town's not responsible for, but we will be getting information on that, I believe. And we will be conveying that to property owners to let them know. One question that came up is, well, how are what are we gonna do about property owners replacing that? Is there any money available for that. I don't have an answer for that question yet, but certainly something we'll have to look at down the road. To see if we can provide any kind of assistance. Through some type of program to help people with that issue.
That would be great. That would be great. And I had the same question as the previous person on the disadvantage, but that'd be good to know. And I'm so glad it is going to be covered by the state. So that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Okay,
John, no other questions on this one?
okay, Article 21 is purchase a new fire truck through free cash. And this one is, so we're ultimately replacing a 94 reserve piece. The truck has 11,000 engine hours on it, 126,000 miles. What we're bringing on a frontline piece, and what will happen is the new apparatus will become a frontline piece, and engine 5 will become a reserve piece. So engine 5 is a 2008, and that will replace the 94 reserve piece. And then the frontline piece will come on. And that will mean that every truck that is a frontline piece was made in the 21st century, which is a milestone for us. So that's good news. So engine 1 is 2020. Engine 2 is 2015, engine 3 is 2018, engine 4 is 2012, and engine 5 will be 2022. Engine 6 is 2002, which is one of the second engines at the center station. And engine 7 will be that 2008. And that's a reserve, so that's it. So that's it. And the cost has gone up for fire trucks. It's $750,000. When I first came here, they were $500,000, and now they're 750. And the same rules apply that with the ambulance. We order it after town meeting. We probably won't get it for a year and a half to 2 years. So that's it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No questions on this one?
Okay. The next is Article 23. So we had done a study a while back, a couple of years back, which also led to the construction of the new fire station in Pinehurst. But it also pointed out some deficiencies in the North Billerica Fire Station. So we're very concerned about particularly the floor in the garage. And so we want to do an assessment of that floor. So the study that we want to do is projected to cost $25,000. We got a couple of quotes on that, and it will consist of the following scope of service: basically reviewing the existing plans and drawings, looking at the field condition assessment, doing a cost estimate on assessed remedial work necessary, reporting out those summaries and conclusions and recommendations and prioritizations, and meeting with the town to do that. So that's what that study will do. Hopefully it won't, say that the building needs we're hoping to avoid having to tear the place down, obviously, but the preliminary assessment when we had a company go through was, seems like it isn't that dire, but we have to do a full assessment to make sure that the building is safe. So that's what this money is for. And that's coming out of free cash. And that's, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, thank you, Marlies Henderson, Precinct 11. I think it's a good idea. The North Billerica Station, it doesn't surprise me that they have issues in the basement because it's built on top of the Middlesex Canal. And when they do this assessment, will there be public input? So when they design restoration or a new building, that they take into account that the Middlesex Canal used to go right through there, or will there be
So I
public
think,
input?
I think that would happen in the second phase, because we're not gonna get, I don't think that much information out of it, just sort of information on the building itself, but if we have to go ahead with this will tell us what we need to do, and then we'll have to go ahead, and then at that point, we'll develop a plan, we'll take that plan and try to execute it, and, at that point, there may be obviously some input from different stakeholders like the canal and conservation and the public. You know, but I think that won't occur in this first phase.
Okay, thank you.
That's all for this one, John.
Okay, so Article 30 is another public works article, it's just to accept some public ways, and these ways were repaved, Plain Street, Dedham Road, Progress Road, Enterprise Road. The commercial roads that have recently been repaved and built up to the standard today. So they are being put forward to be accepted. Woodland is not, it's I believe that's a residential road. Most of that roadway is accepted, there's one piece that is not, so we're looking to accept that road as well. So if anybody has any questions on that, we'd be happy to answer them.
Marlies, did I leave your hand up from the last one?
No, that was nothing. I'll take it down.
All right, sorry. Ken, you're in the meeting.
Hi there, quick question. So I think we had a sort of a prep meeting the other night with a few of the town meeting reps, and they have a couple of questions. So the town already does the maintenance on these roads, right? You do the plowing and all of that stuff, street sweeping or whatever already, right? And the best
That's
part
not
about
entirely
adding,
true. That's not entirely true. So the town does plow those roads,
okay,
keep them clear and free for emergency vehicles and school buses. But we're very limited in what we can do to repair them. And so we go down there and we'll patch a hole and stuff like that, but we cannot spend Chapter 90 funds on an unaccepted way. So that's some of the impetus to accept these roads so that they become eligible to have money spent on them.
okay, and then adding them to the list gets us more state funding, right?
Yes.
More miles equals more state funding. So it sounds like it's a good thing. All right, thank you very much.
No more questions on this one.
Okay, so then just referring to, I don't know if anyone has, is Mark on? Do we know?
Mark is on.
Okay, I don't know if anybody has any questions on the zoning bylaw that's being proposed. It was submitted by the zoning bylaw review committee. And it's mostly a housekeeping kind of thing, that they're trying to clean up some definitions and things like that. And I don't know if you've had time to review it, but if you had any questions and you want to try to get them out of the way before town meeting, I guess now's your chance. So I'd open it up, Clancy.
At this time, we got no hands raised.
All right. And was there one other one I said, oh, yeah.
We got one. Let me just bring back in Ken here.
Okay,
Go ahead, Ken.
Okay, that article, it sounded like the code cleanup one, right? Is that related to the accessory dwelling units and all of that? Is that the one you're talking about? I don't see anything on the screen about or slide on this one, but you know, the in-law apartments and stuff like that. Is that this article that you just mentioned?
no, Mark, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I believe there is, I'm just looking through it right now. A definition change. Referring to in-law apartments, a dwelling unit. So right now, on the warrant, there's a definition for dwelling unit and the proposed change is in red. And that would be to a one-family dwelling. It currently reads a building designed for and occupied exclusively as a residence for one family. And the addition to it would be and may include an accessory in-law apartment. So what we found is there are a lot of permitted in-law apartments throughout town. However, when they get assessed under a two-family dwelling code. So then when they are sold, people believe they are purchasing a two-family. This gives us, at least a definition to point to say, no, it's still considered a single family dwelling. It's one of the requirements of in-law apartments. They retain that appearance. And there's a number of other, regulations that separate it from being an actual two-family. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So it is just code cleanup, and it's, if they still, I guess when the person that the in-law was being used for, perhaps an elderly parent or something like that, passed away, then the use of the in-law apartment can no longer be in-law, and you'd have to get another approval later, right? It doesn't make it, you're not allowing more in-law apartments with this article. I'm not saying that's good or bad either way, but is that correct?
That's correct. The process to obtain a special permit for an in-law apartment remains the same. This just clears up the definition that a single-family house with an in-law apartment is not a two-family. It shouldn't be rented as a two-family. It still remains a single-family home. So in the instance that you're, if God forbid, an elderly parent that you built it for passes away, there is a requirement under the special permit that you register with the town clerk who the occupant of that in-law apartment is. And that in-law apartment, they have to be a direct relation to the owner occupying it. And it can be
Okay.
more than two people, but that's a current requirement under the special permit. That doesn't change.
Great. And then, so if it was sold, they'd still need approval by the ZBA to have it be an in-law if they wanted to use it again, the next person as an in-law. So it doesn't carry over either. So it's the same as before, other than
Correct.
the coding.
The special permit is not transferable from owner to owner. So a new owner, much like they have to do now, would have to go through that process.
Awesome. All right. And the next couple of questions are not mine. They're just from the neighbors that live around here. Sent me some emails. So light manufacturing, I guess, is something that has been added, and it seems like it's okay. But they did ask about what is the electromagnetic radiation? What levels are acceptable? Is it going to be excessive? I'm assuming not, but I am asking just to be safe.
Correct. So right now, if you look at the light manufacturing definition, it's basically two lines. And it allows a lot of businesses to utilize that definition to move into town. Technology's changed and progressed. So we've added, the rest of this definition, like you're saying, electromagnetic radiation, heat, vibration, bright lights, flashing, cinders. Those things would be prohibited under a light manufacturing. It would be classified as a heavy manufacturing and allow the town to regulate it.
Okay, great. And then the last question is on the massage, body work, movement, education. It looks like you guys initially had including but not limited, and they listed some places. So amongst our discussions the other night, it sounded like the reason that was added in at the time was to keep out the sex trafficking type places, of course. And I looked at it from a legal point of view because I do contracts during the day, and including but not limited, we try not to use that ever because it doesn't really do much for your law or bylaw or contract or whatever. But I get why they had it in here originally, and now we're taking that out. So that's my question. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, so I agree with you 100% that the intent of it originally was to keep out some of these businesses that you don't want in town, illegal operations. The regulations have changed over the years. The state actually, in the Board of Health, regulates licensed massage therapists. And then you have a whole host of these other type of body type uses that we've legally found we can't ban. And there's more and more of them that come out every year. The last time the zoning was written, I think this was updated to include what's current. But it's no longer reflective of what the different services are. We're aware of them. We know that in most instances you can't ban them. But I can tell you that all of these type of uses, and even prior to Chief Frost being chief, had a big interest in these as they came into town, and I can assure you, they are all reviewed thoroughly before they're allowed to operate. But it almost became redundant having every single one of these uses on here, like you said, included but not limited to. You can argue just about any type of bodywork service that's recognized would be allowed.
Yep. No, I get it. I get it. No, I get what you're trying to do. And I guess one more question here. There was regarding the adding the barber shops and the beauty salons to the home definition. There were 2 points of view on this in our discussions the other night, but one was, is this going to hurt the people who do have the overhead and the barber shops and the beauty salons, that paying rent and people and all that stuff? Is this going to hurt them because of the competition that could develop? And then somebody else said, well, competition's always good. But one person said it's not exactly fair competition. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw those points at you in case somebody brings it up at town meeting. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, that was a point of discussion among the committee. And you can have both sides of it, but you got to step a further look back and say, well, why would you be protecting a barber shop or a beauty salon? Why isn't it unfair to a dressmaker or a photographer or a broker? We have all these other type professions that are allowed as a home occupation. Why are excluding, a dressmaker is going to have traffic to and from the house the same as a barber shop. A photographer could be the same, a teacher or tutor. The whole point of the home occupation is that your abutting residents that abut this home occupation shouldn't have any outward signs that there's a business there. It's, the owner, one person, so you're not going to have a barber shop with 6 or 7 chairs. You're going to have no employees. It's, the sole barber in his basement or a sole beauty salon. And we're well aware that there's a lot of these that are operating under the radar.
Yeah, no, I did bring that up, by the way. I actually said that back as a counterpoint, but they said, and they made a good point, was that a lot of these dressmakers, photographers, tailors, some of them are perhaps in a dry cleaning, but most of them don't have a storefront. A physician, I don't mean that physician or dentist, but I mean, bookkeeper. Those are almost always in houses, but this is a little different for those two. So
yeah, I think the key point is it's a sole proprietor. There'll be one barber or one beautician, not like your barber shop that has, numerous chairs or numerous barbers, or same with the beauty salon.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
It treats, all occupations basically the same. You can't make the argument that it'd be more invasive than to the neighborhood to any of these other businesses when you compare them.
Great. And then the permit granting authority. So they now crossing out the ZBA, and it says the permit granting authority, I can say that, shall be the authority having jurisdiction that authorizes performance of a specified activity. Takes out ZBA. Can you elaborate a bit on that? And this really is my last question on this one.
Sure. So that was also brought up at FinCom, and it's written rather broadly, and it's written that way to adapt to future zoning modifications. And the example is when I started with the town years ago, a contractor's yard was allowed by right anywhere in town, which was not a good use for some of the properties. The town meeting was voted to change zoning and require a special permit for a contractor's yard. And that special permit granting authority was given to the planning board. However, the zoning wasn't changed to reflect it. So there's really, under the zoning bylaw, 3 permit granting authorities: myself, the building commissioner, the zoning board of appeals, and now the planning board. So that's really just kind of housekeeping to,
Great.
you know,
Great.
define those boards and my department, the building department, as permit granting authorities.
Right. You don't have to list them one by one, and this is for this and this is that. That's perfect. All right. Thank you so much for the explanations. They all made sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other hands at this time.
Okay, before we wrap it up, I just did want to mention, I'll just mention that the CPC does have two, projects being submitted for recommendation. One is the Vining Baseball Field project, that's Article 5. And, that's a $500,000 project to basically, change one of those fields into a 50-70 field, which is, just a little, bigger than a Little League field, but smaller than a high school field, I believe. And that, cleaning up that field and, you know, that'd be in conjunction with the other project, which is the lighting project. So that's a request into, community preservation, and also there is a $25,000 request by the Open Space and Recreation Committee for $25,000 to purchase the MBTA right of way that abuts the Cabot property that the town owns in between River Street and Concord Road. So similar to the property we bought adjacent to Alumni Field a couple of years ago for $12,000. Just an old right of way from the T that would provide us access. So that's what those two things are. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them, but otherwise I know they'll be presented tomorrow night.
John Marlise has a question.
Thank you, Clancy. John, I sent an email today, so you may not have seen it, but I was wondering if the word MBTA should just be changed in owner, because it's not 100% clear whether CSX or MBTA owns it, or is it clear to you?
Okay, I'll try to find out before Tuesday, and if it needs to be amended for legal reasons, we'll do that. We'll amend it on the floor. I'll have somebody do that.
Yeah.
But a good point. Certainly want to make sure that, you know, the right intent is voted on.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ken.
I'm back. Sorry, like the poltergeist. Quick question on the Vining. So I'm all for this, by the way. Absolutely want to have safety for the kids and everything. So this was the money that was booked for it at the last, I think it was the last town meeting. That was for a couple of 2 or 3 different lighting projects. Maybe it was 2 Pollard and Vining, I don't remember. And you guys ran out of the money because the other one took more, and that's why we're coming back for more on this one, or this is not the lighting, though. This is to expand the field, right?
Yeah, so this one's a different project, but just to give you some context, as you know, it's a little confusing, but we came forward last time hoping to have enough money to do both projects, the Pollard and the Vining lighting project. But there wasn't enough money in free cash to do both of them, so the town meeting appropriated $800,000, which was enough to cover the Pollard project, but not the Vining project. And so we ended up coming forward this time for the Vining project for the lighting. That's what the 540 was. And then in the interim, we decided that we were going to upgrade this field to a 50-70 field and presented that one to CPC as a separate project.
Okay, so the CPC one is the expansion and the lighting is the other one.
Yes.
And did you guys end up using up all the money because of the supply chain issues and the increased
No,
cost
it's
of all that, or? was
No, it
just
just
not
wasn't-
coordinated right, or?
Wasn't enough for that project. It was only enough for the Pollard. Although there are issues, but maybe that's why the cost is so high, but yeah, that's, it just wasn't enough money to do both projects.
Okay, yeah, because some people had asked in our planning meeting the other night, you know, was it an underquote or not? And I thought it was probably, I mean, I am in supply chain, but I thought maybe it was supply chain issues, because if we booked if we voted for enough for both lighting projects, but only one could get done, then that's kind of a significant, I guess, difference in price if you can only get one out of the two fields on an 800K allocation. So
So
I was
my
trying to
recol-
figure out what caused the difference.
So
Roughly,
my
it's gonna come up
recollection-
probably.
All right, my recollection was that when I presented it last time, I knew that we weren't gonna have enough money, so presentation, I said that we would try to find the other money from a different source. So it wasn't, the 800 was gonna pay for both of them. We knew and we said right up front that the 800 was only gonna pay for the Pollard. And that we would try to find another source to pay for the vining. And as it turns out, that other source is right now is, this was the soonest I could find that other source. I was hoping that we could find that through ARPA money or something else, but as it turns out, we just had to wait for free cash to come around again.
So Ken, this was the slide from last spring. So we presented a $1.36 million number. And then in the next slide, we said we were only going to be able to fund 800,000 through free cash, and then the remainder will be funded through other capital funding. So this is what we presented last year. So it's exactly.
Totally
what we're
makes
doing.
sense. Yeah, because the 800 plus this 500 would be the 1.3. Couldn't get the 500 last time from other means, which we were hoping for. So I get it. That totally adds up now that I see the two numbers together. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We like when things actually come together the way you thought they would.
That'd be nice. Yeah. Well, thank you again for the explanation, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay,
No other questions, John, unless anybody has
Okay.
anything.
all right, well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. If you do have questions between now and town meeting, feel free to email or call my office and we will try to answer those questions for you to help you make it a smooth and easy town meeting. And thank you for coming out tonight and thank you for your time. And we'll see you Tuesday night. Thank you.